Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com, or just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show today, check out the members section. I just put up 3 new shows up there, mostly talking about Epstein stuff and Maxwell stuff at oppermanreport.com. 3 new shows we just put up there exclusively in the members section. There's about 250 shows in there totally. And also, too, our archives are free. You can always find the archives for free at Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. And it would be a good idea to go there, to take a moment right now and go there and sign up to Spreaker for free, because you never know. The show can go off the air at any moment, okay? A lot of people tune in every night, 10 p.m., 9 p.m., and say, you make it a nightly routine. One day, the radio business is fickle, and we may not always be on the air, so Spreaker would be a good place to hook up with us for life. The book we're going to be talking about today is fascinating. Okay, it's called Healing with Psychedelics, and the author is a man named Dr. Chris Becker, and you can find his website at chrisbecker.org, and he wants to point your attention to a YouTube video on there. He did a YouTube interview on there one time that he's very proud of. Dr. Becker, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Ed, for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Fascinating topic, healing with psychedelics. Before we get into the topic of the book, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Dr. Chris Becker?
Right. I'm in my 60s. I recently retired from a long career in science. I'm a PhD kind of doctor, a chemist by training, and also got into business. Founded a couple companies. The most recent one is still going along very well. And so I've had a lot of experience in my life, including I'm in my third marriage, which we might even get into, a couple of kids who are very well-adjusted, healthy young adults. And so a lot of experience, as they say, water under the bridge for me. So I'm somebody who's really been around the block, as we may say, and but I've had a lot of blind spots, you might say, and we'll talk about that, which which brings us to the book. But so kind of a real thumbnail sketch is, from the professional point of view, a scientist, businessman, recently retired, and enjoying life out in California.
But from reading your biography, it also seems that you've been on a spiritual journey through your whole life, of Buddhism and meditation and stuff.
Right. So I got excited about Zen Buddhism back in the 70s. It was in the air. It was a cultural thing going on. A lot of New Age excitement after the Summer of Love, and I read some books, got excited in it, and after a while, before I mustered up enough courage to actually really get in the pool, I started to do what we call Zen meditation. So that was back in, I started that around the mid-70s, 1970s. And so I stuck with it. I had some years off. I really didn't practice, but mostly since that time, I've been a practicing meditator. So I've had the opportunity to see, what meditation is, and people talk about it, and they go, "Well, what is it really? You're just sitting there, Mm-hmm. So I've had an opportunity to see what meditation is and how it can actually have a positive influence in your life, and at the same time, what limitations there are. So I would say that my life has been one of a spiritual journey. I think it is for a lot of us. We, in one shape or form, we wonder about the world. How did we get here? What are we doing in this body? How did that happen? And try to understand that and, what our role here on Earth is. So that's a spiritual journey. And, I've definitely been one of those people who've been aware of it, struggled with, what it means and how I get to, from A to B. But my life, I would say, has been a spiritual journey.
Now, I've been dabbling lately in some guided meditations that you can find on Facebook and on YouTube, and I've been enjoying it. Then I've also heard about this retreat you can go to in Northern California. You go there, it's like for free. You go there for like a week, and it's vegetarian, and it's a silent meditation. You have to meditate every day silently, where you focus on your breathing and your heartbeat and stuff like that. What type of meditation are you involved in?
Well, I would say it'd be very similar to what you just described, Ed. Probably, I'm guessing what you're describing, people, the name they would give to it would be insight meditation. It's a all this stuff. It's a basically Buddhist based, and of course Buddhism, just like other Christianity and whatever, have different schools and traditions within that umbrella. And so the meditation I do is really very similar to it. In fact, almost the same or a little bit varied. I'd say maybe a little bit varied because I would say for most people, when they're starting to get into meditation, it's good to have something to focus on. And in fact, in the vernacular, we call it focused attention meditation, which you described, which is focusing on the breath, which is a wonderful, wonderful place to focus. It's always there for us. It's calming, it's centering, and so that's a great place to do your meditation. And but it's not the only way to do it. And sometimes, although it's an excellent way to begin, sometimes after you're more experienced, you can kind of loosen the reins a little bit and let your mind go as a kind of drift, maybe like a cloud in the sky. There's other types that go under the name of open monitoring meditation, or in Chinese there's a word called shikantaza, which translates to just sitting, which means you're not trying to do anything. You're just observing what the mind is doing. And you might observe the breath, you might observe sensations in your body, you might observe spiritual light, you might observe emotional issues, emotions that come up, thoughts, but you don't really play with them, you just observe them. And so that's another style, maybe a little bit more advanced for people, but it's a natural continuum of types of meditation.
In the notes you sent over, you describe your own personal journey, your own personal healing journey, that you were experiencing some kind of issues?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us, walking around have some issues, right? And in fact, I would say that most of us. In fact, there's even scientific research, as I mentioned in my book. You can even go to the CDC. People hear about the CDC, Center for Disease Control, now with the COVID, but they also have part of their website. They talk about research that they've done where people, when they were children, experienced bad stuff. Bad stuff happened to them, and it can be all shapes and forms. Some can be really horrific. People can be beaten or raped and molested. But also can be very subtle things like behavior correction. Like you're only really loved if you do act a certain way, or you maybe have a mother who's kind of absent or depressed. Maybe she's depressed, or maybe she's needy. She's at you all the time, asking you to do stuff and filling her needs. There can be all kinds of things that really can affect us deeply. Well, I had my share. We can talk a little bit about that. And but like most people, they're kind of hidden for view. We make these kind of defense mechanisms when we're little, and it's a natural and a good thing because it protects us so we can keep going. But it gets in the way of life as we get older. And in my case, my particular case, I had various symptoms, you might call. The most obvious one was drinking alcohol and smoking pot. I like to do both of those. And especially the on and off with the pot, but pretty much on, and then the alcohol pretty much on until, for like a lot of people, you hit a bump in the road. And a bump in the road for a lot of us can be all kinds of things, like somebody, like a relationship breakup, or somebody dies, or a car accident, or a serious illness, cancer, or whatever. We get some big bump in the road that kind of wakes us up. And in my case, it was my wife who was having a conversation with my brother, and they said, to each other. Basically, he's drinking too much, and we ought to really try to stop it. So they both talked to me and asked me to quit drinking alcohol. I was drinking about a bottle of wine a night would be kind of the average, maybe a little more on the weekend. And I was functional. I went to work. I never drank on the job. I did my job. I was successful at it, but it was impacting my life in a lot of ways that I was in denial, denying about, impacting how I related to my wife, why I had been through 2 divorces before. So it's not just alcohol is one symptom, but there's other symptoms, like more subtle ones, like how you relate to people and how intimate you can be, and whether fear is contaminating your relationship, some deep fear from childhood. So I got a bump in the road. My wife and brother really came after me and said, "You got to stop." So that was, I very reluctantly, it's difficult to do that because, this is like self-medication, the drinking. It does something good. It makes you feel normal. It makes you feel warm and healthy and normal, even though it's not a healthy thing to do. So that's kind of the nature of addictions. And the kind of addictions can be overeating. It can be addicted to your sports team or fast cars. It can be addicted to yoga even. Yoga is normally a healthy thing, but if you're just like fascinated and can't get enough of it, and that can be addictions, things that take you away from the present moment, things that take you away from other people and yourself. So those are all kinds of addictions. So anyway, I got a bump in the road. I got a wake-up call. People might use that phrase. So I said, okay, I'll try, and no guarantees. And so my brother in particular would say, well, what's your plan? How are you going to do it? Because if you just white knuckle it, everybody knows that probably won't work. You'll just relapse. And so I said, okay, well, let me think about it. And I had come across this book that is very popular, still popular book, written by Michael Pollan, called How to Change Your Mind. Bestseller, New York Times bestseller book. And in that book, he talks about the use of psychedelics for healing people. And there's different parts of the book. He talks about the history of it and all the many, many psychological studies back, especially in the 1950s and 60s. And of course, if you look back in history, it's been used for millennia in different indigenous cultures, even in Europe, if you go back far enough. And it's just a natural part of our world. So anyway, back around 1970 or so, they had the war on drugs. They had Timothy Leary talking about drop in and drop out, and the alarm bells went off in society, and so everything got made illegal, even things that just grow naturally, like magic mushrooms. But so anyway, get back to my story. So I read this book and I thought, well, I'll try this because it looks interesting. And when I was in my 20s, I was experimenting back in the 70s. I was experimenting, with some of these substances, like a lot of college-age people do. So I had a little bit of an affinity or comfort level with the idea. So I looked online and Googled around, searched, and I came across an essay that was written by a guy who was a therapist in San Francisco, which is not too far from where I live. And he spoke very knowledgeably and intelligently about psychedelic-assisted therapy, not making any fantastic claims, but was very balanced about his views, and also he's licensed, very well trained professional psychotherapist. And I thought, well, I'd give this guy a call and maybe I'll start some therapy with him. And so that was the path I did, and I was kind of excited to try psychedelic assisted therapy. And he said, well, maybe we can do that, but why don't don't we pump the brakes a little bit here? Let's just do some basic talk therapy for a bit and kind of uncover some things, get a handle on, what's been driving your behavior, what's been making you tick. And so we did that for a few months, which is really a short time. And, a lot of people think about psychotherapy as going on for years. So that's one aspect. These things can go relatively quickly. But after a few months, he said, okay, I'll refer you to somebody who does this in the U.S., somebody in the Bay Area, it turns out, so it wasn't far away from me. And that's how I got into the path of using psychedelics as not the primary thing, but as an assistance, like they say, psychedelic-assisted therapy. So that's kind of a long story, but that's how I got started on that path.
Well, let me ask you this, because you said you had experimented with hallucinogenic psychedelics. I'm assuming it was LSD, right? Back in the 70s. What made you stop?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, I experimented. I read the Carlos Castaneda books back in the 70s, and that got a lot of young people like myself excited. And I tried peyote, which is a cactus that contains mescaline. I also did some LSD. What else did I do? Back in the day, I think one mushroom trip, which was a little too potent for me at the time. What made me stop? Well, I don't know. I think maybe the career. I went to graduate school to get a PhD. There was a lot of intense work, and then to start a family. And I guess I had kind of reached kind of as far as you can go in that setting, which was an immature setting, and there's no guide, and there's no culture, there's no a big view about what you're trying to do spiritually, and so I kind of I got busy. Busy may be a good word, school, and then career, and then family, and then kids, and so I think that's what made me stop.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I've used it too as well. I've used mushrooms and LSD, mescaline, all that kind of stuff back again in the 70s myself. I'm 58 years old in September. I'll be 58. But I stopped, and I was even selling it too. I was buying it from Manhattan. I was selling it back in Staten Island, large amounts. And I stopped because of a very bad experience I had one night on it. And I felt that it was so bad that not only did I stop, but I encouraged other people I knew that were selling it to stop as well. But you have never had a bad experience.
Well, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because it reminds me of, and this may be a little bit more to the point that's very much like yours. I think, it's a long time ago now, but my memory serves me, is that the last one of these trips I took was the only one I took with mushrooms. And I was in Mexico traveling with a friend, and we were at this place south of Oaxaca in southern Mexico, where the hippies knew that the magic mushrooms grew. So we got some. We went to this town, took a bus outside of Oaxaca, got to this town, and then bought some from some guy on a dirt road, and took them down to the beach, put them in honey to preserve them. So these are fresh, not dried mushrooms. We were very naive at the time. We didn't even weigh them. Still to this day, I have no idea how much we took, but I think it was probably more than we should have. But that was a very tough, bad trip. And I think that was, it kind of taught me a lesson. Was basically, it was like, if you think about it, a lot of people look at them as medicine and as teachers, as earth teachers. Basically, it was giving me a lesson like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. You're not ready for this. And so you're gonna have an experience that will bring that point home to you. And so, it was a bad trip on the beach down in southern Mexico. It ended okay, but I think I got my ass kicked, basically, in the trip. And that probably was the last one I took.
Yeah, usually when you talk to people who've stopped, it was because of a bad experience. And I know, especially nowadays, too, these young girls who get into LSD, and it seems to fry their brain in a way that they really don't recover from. But I guess this is large doses of serious daily, LSD, people who really, really get obsessed with it. Now, what do you make of that then?
Well, I think, I'm not. I don't think of these substances as addictive, although some people overdo it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of an addiction of its source. They have an addictive personality, like myself, that it manifests different ways, and they get into something that for some reason grabs a hold of them. And these kind of things like LSD and magic mushrooms or whatever, MDMA is especially an important one to consider in this regard because it's been used as a party drug. They're not good for you to take them a lot. That's not really how they should be used, and they can hurt you. They can, like you said, fry your brain, make you even induce psychosis in some people. So I think that one of the big messages I have about this, especially having done psychedelics in my 20s, and I never did it in that way, like everyday kind of stuff, but having done it in my 20s and 60s, is that you have to have a lot of respect for these medicines and do it with somebody who's actually trained, like a guide/therapist who can help you work out, issues that you have, that we all have. And by trained, I don't mean like they took a 6 weeks correspondence course. I mean somebody who's maybe been trained for 2 or more years in this field, knows how to work with people on journeys, and also knows psychotherapy, really knows how to work with people. So that's one of my primary messages, is that that's how, that's the healthy way. And I know a lot of young people that are really in the do-it-yourself mode. I get that, but that's still the message I would like to convey, that this is really the healthy and healing and way to bring about really good health for yourself and also for all the people around you.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just remembered, I was talking to a young lady today, about 20 years old, or maybe 21, around that age, and I said, oh yeah, today I'm interviewing this doctor who uses hallucinogens, psychedelics, to treat depression. And she said, oh my God, bless his heart, because, I use it myself to treat my bipolar and my depression, my manic phase and stuff like that. But she's self-medicating, which is something we don't want to encourage. Now, a couple of questions for you. Now, you say you abstain from alcohol now, correct?
Right, I haven't had any for about 2 years.
What about marijuana? Because that's in this hallucinogenic field as well. Do you participate in marijuana?
No, I don't.
Okay, and why is that?
Because I was using it in the same way as alcohol, as kind of as an escape. And so I just decided, at the beginning, of course, I didn't know what was going to happen, how it was all going to unfold. But after a while, with the therapy, I realized that the craving went away. I just never felt like I needed it.
Yeah, marijuana, the same thing for me. It started making me feel very paranoid. I wasn't enjoying it, and I was just smoking all the time. And I'm glad I stopped. Although when they legalized it in Vegas, I did go back and try a couple of times. I have to admit, but it's just not for me anymore. Now, what about ayahuasca?
Well, ayahuasca, I've only tried once, and fairly recently, just to try to understand, what different medicines do. It's pretty popular. I don't know exactly how popular, but I know it's pretty popular. You hear a lot of people talk about it. It's a powerful hallucinogen or psychedelic, maybe a better word, because you don't really hallucinate. That's not the best word, but a lot of people say different things about it, including like, oh, it's so much more powerful than mushrooms and whatever. But I'm pretty experienced now, so I know, and I'm a chemist by training, and I also know the structure of these molecules. They're very, very similar between mushrooms and ayahuasca. The molecules are. My experience is pretty much the same experience, which was powerful. It depends on the dose, right? All these things are dose dependent. The only difference about ayahuasca is it has this poison in it, it's a kind of a body poison, not enough to like kill you. Well, I suppose if you had enough of it, but under normal doses, it's not going to kill you, but it makes you kind of sick, right? And that's a known thing about ayahuasca. It makes you kind of retch, maybe puke a little, or even if or dry heaves or whatever. So it's got that, but it's a funny thing, ayahuasca, this retching or whatever, because it's done on this journey, so it has a purifying feeling to it. So it's not, so it has some positive aspect, even though maybe from a physiological perspective, it's not a good thing. But anyway, my experience is limited, but I think from my one experience, I had a pretty good handle on it, and I have respect for it, like all these medicines, and so anyway, that's my quick take on ayahuasca.
Well, real quick before we take a commercial break, was your dosage that you took? I guess you took it here up in the States. Is that the same as these people go down to South America and these shamans are chanting with them and giving them these huge doses, from what I understand?
Yeah, I think so. The guy who gave it to me was trained. He spent 2 years in the jungles of Peru, so he's very well. Not just versed in it, but also trained in, administering it. And we talked about dose, and like I said before, all these things are dose dependent. And but he gave me of what you would call a full dose, like just as I would, and I would call these therapeutic doses. They're pretty strong. They're not for partying. You don't go to the concert with doses like this. They're for healing. But the one I took with ayahuasca was like a full. He called it full strength.
Gotcha. Okay, we're with Dr. Chris Becker. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I used to get high with when I was a kid was named Chris Becker, too. From Staten Island. Yeah, I'm not going to forget your name, Chris Becker. He's written this fascinating book. This is a fascinating topic, man. For me, at least. I don't know. It's hard to guess what the audience likes anymore. Healing with psychedelics. Dr. Becker, describe to us what a typical. How do you use this to heal people with depression, addiction, and what other things can you heal with this?
Right, and also your listeners should know that a lot of this work is underground, but a lot of it is also now in FDA-approved clinical trials. So, and there's even a government website called clinicaltrials.gov. And you can do searches like for psilocybin or MDMA, and you can see all kinds of clinical trials. I think there were 80, amazing number, between those two compounds that are ongoing or recently completed. But anyway, back to your question. How do you remind me? How do you do these things, or how do you take the therapy?
Yeah, like what does the therapy process consist of?
Right. So the very basics of it are you have to work with somebody. It's a therapist, somebody who's trained in psychotherapy of one type or another, and including working with people under therapeutic doses of these powerful medicines. And so there's talk therapy involved. People should know that. It's not like you meet somebody and boom, you do it and that's it, goodbye. It's embedded in part of a psychotherapy program. So that means you do some talk therapy first. Part of it is you have to build a relationship with the person, because you have to really trust this person. You're going to be in a vulnerable state. You're going to be working on a lot of emotional issues. And in order for the therapy to be effective, you have to trust the person. And also in the place you're at, you have to feel safe in it. You can't feel like, somebody's going to open the door and, whatever. And so you do some talk therapy to begin with. And that could be, depends on the situation. In some of these, whether it be legally approved or underground, it might be just a few sessions to get to know each other, talk about what issues you want to work on. Or it could be maybe you work with for a year if you really need to work. Sometimes I've heard guides say that, somebody will come in and they want to do this work, and they realize this person's not stable yet. So it may take a year before talk therapy before the guide feels that they're ready. So it depends on the situation. In my case, like I said, it was a few months with one guy who's a licensed therapist, and then he handed me over. And then it was another month or two with the guide therapist before I did my first journey. And so after the journey, also you have to do follow-up, we call it integration. So like you have to build that experience into your life. So it's not just, you did it and it's over and like, well, I got nothing out of it. So you really want to embed that into your psyche, into your life. And so I think two key words we have are intentions. That's like before the journey, like what are you working on? What are the issues you want to work on? Your psychological issues, your past, maybe past trauma, your relationship with your mother, your brother, whatever. Maybe you were in a car accident or you were on a battlefield or whatever. So those are intentions. And then following the journey, you do integration to build that into your psyche, to make it a part of you. So it's not just a one-off and it's all over. And then for some people, usually there can be more than one journey. Sometimes one's enough for people, what they're trying to do. Sometimes just a couple, 2 or 3, or even sometimes people more. They do more. They go deeper. Some of those people, like myself, who's done more, not a huge number more, but more, have been sort of on that spiritual path and trying to open up their understanding, our understanding of our spiritual nature, what this world is from a spiritual point of view. So, but I think to summarize it quickly, Ed, is that at least in the practice that I know and recommend, and also that it's bordering close to legal, it's done in the context of trained therapists who really helps you work with issues that are in front of you.
You mentioned real quick that the setting, the location is very important. Where do you do your therapy sessions?
Right. The phrase that is in the community is set and setting. Set means your mindset, like your intentions. You're taking this seriously. You're planning it. You're coming to it with a trusting presence with your guide and a safe setting. Setting is the actual physical location you're at. And I've been in a couple settings. One has been in a safe house, in a room in a safe house, where the setting is also, this is also very introspective. So even if it's daytime and there's light in the room, you wear eye shades, so eye covering. So it's so it's all black, and you lie down on a like, for what I've done, it's like a little mattress on the floor, and covers if you need, with a pillow, with the eye shades on, and the guide might play some music that is appropriately chosen for the situation. But I've also done it outside in a redwood forest, which has a different feel to it, a beautiful feel to it, maybe without music or much music. So you can have different settings, but I think the key thing is that they feel comfortable, you feel safe. We talk about, another word we use sometimes is a container. You feel like you're in a safe container. Everything, you don't have to worry about other things. You're able to turn inside into your mind, into your experience, your body and your mind, and not worry about external events, not worry about the person you're with. They're there to support you. They'll be there. Maybe they'll interact with you a little bit, but they're not in your face. So that's set and setting.
Okay, couple questions. Are they tripping too? Are the people with you?
Generally not.
Okay,
no, they're
that's interesting.
Sober.
Okay. Now, did you ever see that movie, The Trip, with Jack Nicholson and Peter Fonda?
I don't think so, but I'm gonna watch it now.
I forget who the third actor is in there. I can't remember his name. I think Drew something. Another famous actor from the period of time, and it's very much like you described with the eye shades and the whole thing. Very realistic in many ways. Then it gets a little far fetched toward the end, I guess, because it's going on a panic attack, running around town going crazy. But fascinating now, because I can see when you are on these psychedelics, you do make these. Wow, you have these aha moments, these introspective realizations about your life, and now it all makes sense. And unless you have someone there documenting and writing this down, the next day you don't remember. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, yeah. So not everybody does this, I know, but my guy does it, and it's pretty common. He'll have a notepad there, and when I say something, he'll write it down, and we'll talk about that later in integration. And also, sometimes he'll prompt you. A lot of times, he'll just let you go, because you're exploring things in your mind and your feelings. But every now and then, if you're quiet for a while, he might come over, or she might come over and say, "How are you doing? Where are you at now?" And kind of, prompt you to say a little bit so that it can be useful later. To to integrate, to understand, your process.
Have you looked into the history of the creation of LSD and like how many of the people, the advocates for it, like Timothy Leary, were government agents and sponsored by military and CIA and stuff? Have you looked into that history?
Well, I know some of it, and Michael Pollan's book is really good in that regard. He gives you kind of a review. There was like 1,000 actually scientific papers published on LSD, primarily LSD, I think, maybe some other substances, some maybe psilocybin too, and back in the 50s and 60s. And a lot of psychiatrists were really excited about it. Before it got all shut down. In fact, I think in Michael Pollan's book, he mentions that I think the state of Saskatchewan in Canada actually had it as official treatment for alcoholism.
Yeah.
So it's the psychiatrist, and I knew one who's passed away, but he was a really wonderful psychiatrist. He told me that he took it in the 50s, as part of these. People were exploring, because and if you're in that field, you want to know what helps people. And in the right situation, right, it can help people, really. And then, it got all crazy with the drug, war on drugs and a lot of misinformation. People were, misinformation, like, they're all jumping out of windows and all this stuff. And anyway, there's a long history of that. And then also, I think it's worth people knowing and considering that these things have been used in human culture going back thousands of years. They haven't been wild and crazy, they haven't been using them to go to concerts. They've been using them, there'd be a shaman or some elder who would do it in a very controlled way for people who needed it, or in the right, maybe an initiation, or they were having some psychological problems, they would use it. So it's only in the last 50 years that it's been called, illegal, or something that's bad. But there is a renaissance now, and like I mentioned, a lot of the FDA-approved trials and a lot of underground activity growing, and a buzz in the culture that these things can be helpful medicines.
Yeah, my old friends back in New York are heavily involved in ergotamine treatment of heroin addiction. Are you familiar with that?
Ergotamine?
Ergotamine, yeah.
I mean, I think of ergot with the LSD, but I'm not sure I know the word ergotamine, so help me out.
Well, look it up. Ergotamine is the way I believe it's pronounced, treatment of heroin addiction. And the guys from New York are heavily into that and been advocating since the 70s the use of this treatment of heroin addiction. And I know some of the people that were treated with this, and it was successful. Now, you've used so many different substances. What do you use? What do you find the most effective in your therapy sessions?
Well, the therapy in here in my 60s that I was introduced with, which is part of a culture, and that is it's fairly prescribed. I'm sure there are exceptions to it, but they like to start off therapy with maybe one or two journeys with MDMA, and then followed up with magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms. And the MDMA is, all these things are fairly potent doses, therapeutic doses, although they oftentimes start a little bit low just to kind of see how the person's going to do with it. But MDMA is a very heart-opening drug. Can open up your emotions and your empathy for other people and also yourself. And it's a very good way to start a therapy. It's kind of a soft, like I said, heart opening is really a nice way to describe it. And kind of maybe, lower your defenses, lower your anxiety, increase your feeling of love for yourself and for others. So it's a good way to start. And then a lot of times people will go on to magic mushrooms, which are a little bit a bumpier road, but they can bring out a lot of things that are hidden in your psyche that maybe MDMA cannot do that so well. So they'll, we have these things back in our unconscious that maybe haunt us, make us behave in certain ways, make us react in certain ways. And the mushrooms can be very good to help bring that out and clean that out, bring that up to the conscious level where it can be worked on.
Now, I know you don't use marijuana yourself, but would you suggest it for others on this journey with using these different kinds of psychedelics?
That's a good question. I know a lot of people speak highly of it, so I want to be careful in how I answer the question. I don't find it necessary. I know that some people speak well of it. So I try to be maybe a little more neutral, but I'm not. Since I use it in sort of an addictive way, I have pretty much. I pretty much want a hands-off kind of perspective, I guess.
Okay, and one of the questions that came over in the notes here was about do you believe that magic mushrooms or psychedelics should be legalized for the general public?
That's a really big question, and so let me break the answer down into a couple parts, because just to say yes or no is really not a good answer. First of all, they actually are legal in some cases, and very interesting in some churches. Like Native American Church has a legal status for the use of peyote, which is mescaline-containing cactus, and I think it's Santo Daime Church uses ayahuasca legally, and this is in the U.S. I'm talking. Yeah. It's elsewhere in some places it's legal, more openly legal. So that's interesting. Just why in religious contexts it's legal, but that's a whole different, bigger topic. And then there are these FDA clinical trials, which I know at least one of them is phase 3 now, which means it may become legal with prescription. And it's done in a therapy session. You have to have a licensed therapist work with you, with some therapy before and after. That's with MDMA, but there are also clinical trials with psilocybin. And so I think most people think that what I hear is those trials are going well. There are a lot of positive results, and people expect at least some of them to be approved. And so, within the next few years, I think you'll see more of these things, MDMA and psilocybin, become legally available in the United States with prescription. And in general, I don't recommend, my personal feeling is I don't recommend legalization like marijuana has been legalized, because just the kind of way our system is, capitalism and all, people are out there to make money. Yeah. And so they'll end up pushing it on people who really shouldn't be using it in a unsupervised manner, and I think that can hurt people. So, but I do think it should be decriminalized. I don't think anybody should be going to jail because they have magic mushrooms. So that's kind of kind of a little bit long-winded answer to your question about legalization.
Yeah, and the sentencing for like possession of LSD is just really intense, like 10 years plus. Dr. Chris Becker, thank you so much. You can find him at chrisbecker.org, and the book is called Healing with Psychedelics. You can find it at Amazon.com, but also too on your website too as well, right? chrisbecker.org.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Good night.